lot of players facing the daunting task of choosing which finely dressed gentleman to play as when booting up your average game of casual can come with quite some conflict. What does my team need right now? Am I safe to relax on a less try-hardy playstyle, or do I need to get in and pick up my team's slack? Though perhaps the question on the forefront of most minds when first joining your 85th upward match of the day is, does my main work here? For some classes this is an easier question than others, and for your average frontline fighter mains the answer will usually be a solid probably, but for spy mains the answer can be a probably but So for people who are less sure how to properly assess the game state and don't have a full understanding of spy's role in a team, which admittedly for your average casual game may not matter quite as much as I'm letting on, how do you know exactly when to pick spy? When does spy work best? Or, to elaborate, when does spy contribute to your team's success in the most noticeable way, being non-intrusive to the composition of your team and the game state while simultaneously being the most fun to play? Overall, I don't think there is one definitive answer to this question, but rather a myriad of factors that can all vary depending on your own personal opinion of when you play at your best. Probably the factor that influences most people's judgment on whether they should or shouldn't pick spy, however, can be seen from the very second you join a game, the number of spies already on your team. You'll hear plenty of people, myself included, talking about how you shouldn't and can't stack spies like you can with other classes, and this is for good reason. Spy is a glass cannon that depends more than most on a strong core team. He is the weakest class in the game, and hold on just a minute. Ask any TF2 player and they'll tell you a different number of spy players they'd prefer to have on their team before they even consider choosing the class. Most people prefer anywhere from none to 2 or even 3 if they're feeling really adamant, because I can do it better than those buffoons. My personal number before I can feel confident picking the class though is a rather stubborn 0. Well, okay, maybe 1 sometimes. Look, if I'm the only spy on my team, then at least I know what kind of paranoia and mischief I'm causing. I have no idea what the other guys are doing. All it takes is for one free-to-play spy to die, and suddenly the entire enemy team knows that we have at least one spy, and will effectively double their spy-checking efforts once they realize we have a second. If I'm the only one back there doing stuff, at least I can accurately keep track of who knows that I exist and where I'm likely to be. I can't tell you the amount of times a friendly spy has given me away and caused my prompt death just by putting the enemy on high alert at times that I can't possibly predict. Not to mention how starved for kills spies can be once their numbers increase. So many backs, so little time. Obviously, this effect gets worse with more spies on the team, but it is most noticeable in the 1 to 2 range. Of course, if I see that the other spies on my team are doing less than adequate on the scoreboard, I'm fine with sticking as the class if I've already been at it for a while. But the second I see someone doing better than me, my pride collapses and I basically accept that both my kill count and my fun will more than likely be cut in half for the rest of the game, and this is just the way that spy is. It's my belief that spy's effectiveness mostly depends on 5 key factors, at least 5 factors outside of your control, other than your own mechanical skill and game sense. Number 1, the experience of the enemy team. Obviously, the more experienced in the game you are, the more times you've encountered spies and learned through trial and error how to dispatch the 99% of them that aren't cracked beyond scientific and biblical reason. As a spy, you have no idea what kind of team you're going to be put up against until you die to them. One match could be an all-access pass to the backsides of 6 insensible snipers, and the next match you're wondering whether you accidentally hit the Pro Highlander scrim button instead of casual. In this way, spy's performance can feel pretty random, so it can be hard to judge whether you should play him upon first glance. Number 2, the enemy team composition. As a spy, your most consistent picks will be the less mobile classes, like Heavy, Sniper, and Engineer. Those that are often preoccupied with thinking about things other than turning around. If the enemy instead starts stacking pyros and scouts, then you may as well start searching for that next lobby, because Gator knows you're not even coming within sniffing distance of anyone's back before being incinerated the second you uncloak. The enemy doesn't even have to be particularly skilled. As my grandfather used to say, if you throw enough men with flamethrowers at the French guy, he'll eventually stop showing up. It didn't make a lot of sense when he first told me that, but I'm starting to put the pieces together. Like, what am I even supposed to do here? And then they gave this guy the ability to remove sappers. Fantastic. Number 3, how long you are in the game. Pretty simple, the longer you stay in the game, the more people will get wise to your act. A lot of players often see a pretty sheer drop-off in performance at the start of the game compared to any time after that, and this is because Spy gets way less effective once people know he's out there. Obviously, this links to my first point about the experience of the enemy team, but even Pablo Gonzalez 2009 can eventually figure out that the guy who kills you from behind can be stopped by just turning around. Number 4, the number of spies on your team. I've already talked about this one, so I'm going to move on, but to summarize, just like in real life, you should probably dial back on the number of French people. Number 5, the map. Some maps are absolutely fantastic for Spy. Upward, you've got all these alternate flanking routes and ways to get behind the enemy, hidden health and ammo packs in areas devoid of much traffic, larger open spaces to make it easier to avoid bumping into people. Meanwhile, in Gold Rush, I don't like Gold Rush. So with all these outside factors that you have no way of controlling, along with the unreliability of your own skill and of Spy as a mechanical class, it gets much harder to judge whether or not Spy can work in your game until you've spent some time in the match. So the best advice I can give is to not start the game playing as Spy, but rather to play a different class until you feel the need arises for one, or until you feel like these 5 prerequisites for a successful Spy game are pretty well met. If all else fails, there's nothing wrong with having a quick glance at your team comp and the scoreboard and judging it from there. But I often find playing Spy most satisfying when I'm feeling a crucial need to enable my team to perform better, which in the end is what playing Spy is all about. Speaking of team, which team does Spy perform better on, offense or defense? Well, this mostly comes down to personal experience, but I often find myself feeling more comfortable on defense, and this could just be from the animated shorts ingraining into my brain that red is better than blue, but I usually perform better when playing defense anyway. It gives me more of a reliable fallback to my teammates should things get hairy, whereas on offense my teammates will not always be as pushed up into the enemy. Being on defense generally feels safer, so it gives me the confidence to go for more ballsy plays knowing that my team shouldn't be too far behind to take advantage of my meddling schemes. However, I will admit that offense Spy does hold a pretty vital role in destroying sentry nests and generally harassing the enemy NGs and overextending players, probably more so than a red Spy would. Blue Spy is mainly about creating opportunities for the team to push forward, and his effectiveness takes a sharp dive when pushing the last point just because there isn't much more behind to get behind. Red Spy mirrors this, in fact, as his effectiveness starts low when the whole team is basically spawn camping, but his skill comes into play much more quickly when the enemy begins to gain level footing. The enemy has to be set up before Spy can knock them down. Which leads me swiftly onto my last point, and onto a revelation that I've only really realized in the last year of playing. I believe that Spy works best, more than ever, when the teams are balanced. That's right, Spy does his job best when both teams have equal footing. But come on, I hear you say, how does that make sense? Surely Spy is doing his best when his team is crushing the enemy, and that might sound valid, but let's examine that claim for a moment. If your team is already stomping the enemy, chances are it's not because of you. At least not if you're playing Spy. You're usually pub stomping because your power classes and pocket medic duos are pushing right up into the enemy spawn, at which point getting kills as Spy will be like starting at level 1 in a day old deep.io lobby. And do people still play this game? What I mean to say is that Spy doesn't work when your team is destroying because, well, they're destroying without you, and the game will basically become a race to the enemy's spawn point looking to grab any kill possible as quickly as you can, which most other classes are more capable of doing than Spy. On the other side of the coin, if the teams are unbalanced in favor of the enemy and you find the payload is being pushed up faster than a bot's crosshair, it's likely the enemy already has more than enough experience as a whole to completely shut down a Spy and to watch their backs. They might have 3 heavies and 2 pyros stacked on the cart, constantly flaming because that's a thing you can do, at which point your chances of providing any kind of assistance plummet. You might be thinking, oh, why don't you just wait for your team to provide a distraction? And you'd have a point if they weren't permanently dead because you're the only member of the team who hasn't given your brain for science. I hate to say it, but sometimes your team is a lost cause, and there's nothing a Spy can do to change that if there's no pulse in the team to support whatever he's trying to attempt. This probably could have fit in the 5 uncontrollable factors thing I just went through, but it's my video and I say 5 is a nicer number than 6. So then there's the healthy middle, a game where the teams are balanced. And this is where I truly believe Spy shines best. With balanced fights where both teams are repelling the other's attacks just as effectively, Spy and the picks that he gets often have a much more noticeable effect on the game state. Where before you were just killing whoever you could get your hands on because your team was obliterating everyone else, now there is more of a focus on choosing your targets wisely, and a more noticeable and satisfying reward for doing so. When the game state is so tightly balanced that one wrong move for either team could shift the tides of battle completely, not only is Spy the most effective, he's also the most fun. Quick side note here, this isn't in the script, but since I've written this, I attended the seasonal and European bracket where I played as Spy, and honestly, because the teams were balanced, at least in day 2, playing Spy was just so incredibly fun. Probably the most fun I've had playing a Spy, at least competitively, definitely. Just because I could get certain picks and they would have like such an impact because you're in comms with your team, and you know the game state is so tight and everyone's doing so well. So yeah, I think that experience has definitely proved this point about what's this about Spy, probably. Alright, carry on. In your average casual match, it's pretty rare to find moments when playing Spy actively contributes towards helping your team, outside of just killing a bunch of dudes. But that makes it all the more special and self-fulfilling when you can tell you made a difference. And I feel this effect is most obvious in games with balanced teams. Obviously, you'll very rarely get a game where the teams are 100% balanced, but as long as there's no complete pub stomping going on from either side, Spy can still feel pretty rewarding. So, that's my stance on the matter. But there's one last piece of advice I have for those of you choosing Spy. One last point I have to make before I end this video. My last piece of wisdom to impart on when Spy truly works best. You ready for it? Spy works best on servers without random crits. Wait, the outro may have started playing, indicating that the core content of the video is now over, but did you know that my Patreon has been reworked? More specifically, there are now only 3 tiers with shiny new badges, and 2 of them are a little cheaper now. So if you've been holding out and supporting me, then now's your chance. As a little reward, if you get either of these tiers, you get to see every video of mine a day early. And if for whatever reason you decide to get this tier, then you get to have your name read out alongside these awesome people. Demo Dude TF2, Mega, Mr. Sir DB, and Vex. Thank you sincerely and bewilderingly for your support. Okay, now the video's over. Cheerio.